The courtroom was wrapped in a thick silence, the kind that clings to your chest and makes every breath a deliberate effort. Every seat was taken, every gaze locked onto the man at the center. Sergeant Nathan Carter, dressed in full military uniform, sat in his wheelchair, the medals on his chest reflecting the harsh glow of the fluorescent lighting. Beside him sat Thor, a German shepherd with an alert but composed expression, leash gripped tightly in Nathan's hand. To the audience, he looked like any other service dog. To Nathan, he was far more. He was family. Nathan's jaw tensed as the judge reminded him that this might be his last opportunity to speak. The military had decided Thor would be reassigned, deemed government equipment needed for another mission. After years of shared danger, the idea of being separated from Thor now felt like a profound betrayal. Nathan's hand trembled slightly on the leash as he steadied his voice. "Your Honor," he began, emotion raw in his tone. "Thor is not just a piece of equipment. He saved my life in ways none of you could ever comprehend. On the battlefield, he dragged me out of harm's way, shielded me from bullets, even warned me of traps I hadn't seen. And when I came home, broken, unable to even look in a mirror, Thor stayed with me. He gave me purpose. Please don't take him away." The room remained hushed, the air thick with quiet sympathy. Some in the crowd wiped their eyes, others exchanged glances filled with grief and anger. The judge's expression stayed unreadable, his eyes lingering on Nathan for a moment as he prepared to give his decision. But then, something no one expected occurred. Thor rose suddenly, pulling free from Nathan's unsteady grip. He approached the judge and barked sharply, his voice cutting through the silence. Gasps rippled across the courtroom. The bailiff stepped forward cautiously, though Thor showed no aggression, only urgency. His barks were deliberate, urgent, like he was trying to warn them. "Thor," Nathan called out, panic in his voice. But deep inside, he already knew. He'd seen this behavior countless times during combat. Thor wasn't barking randomly, he was signaling danger. Murmurs began to rise among the crowd. "What's wrong with the dog?" someone whispered. Nathan pushed himself forward, his voice shaking. "He's not barking for nothing. He only acts like this when there's a threat. He's trying to warn us." The judge paused, gavel forgotten, eyes fixed on the dog. Apart from Thor's sharp barks, the courtroom was still again. This wasn't just about Nathan anymore. Thor had sensed something, and Nathan began to feel a flicker of hope. This wasn't the end. Something bigger was unfolding, and Thor was determined to make it known. Thor's barks echoed off the courtroom walls, slicing through the thick tension like a knife. His stance was alert, body low, muscles tight, eyes locked onto the judge's bench. Nathan clenched the armrests of his wheelchair, watching closely. This was no ordinary barking. Thor's body language told the truth. He'd detected something. Nathan's heart pounded. A rush of adrenaline carried him back to the battlefield. But this wasn't war. It was supposed to be a place of order. "Thor, heel," Nathan commanded, his voice trembling. Thor glanced back briefly, as if to reassure Nathan that he had control. Then he turned back, pacing slowly and deliberately in front of the bench. His bark shifted to low, rumbling growls that vibrated through the air. The crowd murmured, the earlier sympathy turning into unease. "Mr. Carter," the judge said, irritation creeping in. "Control your Honor," Nathan interrupted, louder now, steadier. "Thor isn't acting out. He's trained to detect threats, explosives, danger. He wouldn't be doing this without a reason." The courtroom stilled once more. Nathan's words began to shift the atmosphere, from doubt to an emerging sense of fear. Then, without warning, Thor stopped barking. The sudden silence was deafening. Thor's entire frame locked up as his head turned sharply toward the far end of the room. A deep growl rumbled from his chest, his ears rigid. Even the judge stiffened. All eyes turned to the courtroom doors. A wave of anxiety swept through the room, whispers blooming into quiet panic. Nathan followed Thor's gaze, his heartbeat thundering. He'd seen this exact moment on the battlefield, just before disaster struck. "Thor," Nathan whispered, almost breathless. "What is it?" Thor stood still, every muscle tense, growling low and steady. Whatever he had sensed wasn't just about Nathan anymore. It was a threat to everyone in the room. The growl deepened, echoing like distant thunder. The judge looked shaken, still gripping the gavel but not moving. The bailiffs glanced at each other uneasily. Nathan gripped his wheelchair tighter. He knew this scene. He knew what it meant. Danger was near. Very near. "Stay calm," he muttered, though the words felt empty. One of the bailiffs stepped forward, hand resting on his weapon. "It's just a dog, right?" he said nervously. But his movements were slow, measured. Nathan's voice rose again. "Number Thor doesn't react like this to noise or people. He senses what we can't." The judge hesitated, then gave a nod. The bailiffs approached the door. Thor's growl rose again as they neared. The larger of the two reached for the handle. The room collectively held its breath. Thor barked sharply as the door creaked open, revealing a dark hallway. At first, nothing was there. But Thor's barking intensified. He remained laser-focused on something invisible. The lead bailiff stepped into the hallway, face pale. "There's something here," he said. Nathan leaned forward, his chest tight. He knew that tone. Thor was never wrong. The air felt heavier, as if dread itself hung over the room. Thor's barking cut through the silence, his posture tense and immovable. The bailiff moved forward again, a weapon drawn, while his partner swept a flashlight through the corridor. Still nothing, but Thor didn't let up. His instincts screamed of danger. "What's out there?" the judge asked, voice cracking. His fear showed, despite his effort to maintain control. "I don't see anything," the bailiff replied, uncertain. "But it doesn't feel right. It's too quiet." Nathan's heart dropped. That phrase, "too quiet," was always followed by disaster. He raised his voice above the growing whispers. "If Thor's acting like this, there's a reason. We need to evacuate. Now." But fear held everyone in place. The second bailiff turned on his flashlight, its beam cutting through the dim corridor. "There's nothing," he said, voice trembling. Thor didn't stop. He lunged, barking fiercely, nearly yanking the leash from Nathan's hands. Then came the sound, a metallic clang echoing through the hallway. Everyone froze. Thor lunged again, barking with urgency. Panic swept the room. The larger bailiff drew his weapon. "What the hell was that?" he said. Nathan yelled, "Get Thor back. He's never wrong. Something's coming." Another clang echoed, louder, closer. The energy in the room shifted. Now there was no doubt. Whatever was coming, it was nearly upon them. The sound rang out again, sharp and metallic, like an alarm from deep within the hallway. Tension stretched tight as a wire. Thor barked louder, straining with all his strength. Nathan held the leash, heart pounding, the sense of looming threat now undeniable. The bailiffs advanced, flashlight and weapon in hand. Still the hallway appeared empty, but Thor's behavior said otherwise. The judge called out, his fear cracking through his voice. "Do you see anything?" "Nothing yet," the bailiff answered. "But something's not right." He advanced another step, the sound of his boots ringing down the hallway. Whispers of unease spread among the courtroom spectators. Some clutched their things tightly, others subtly shifted toward the exits. The tension in the room was contagious, spreading like fire. Nathan edged his wheelchair forward, eyes locked on Thor, who had gone still once more. The dog's ears stood erect, his body frozen, gaze unmoving on the doorway. "He sees something," Nathan said, his voice quivering. "I don't know what it is, but it's there." And just as the bailiff reached the corridor's midpoint, a faint movement stirred, barely visible, but enough to send the smaller bailiff stumbling backward, his flashlight beams scattering wildly. "There!" he cried, panic overtaking him. The larger bailiff snapped his gun up, aimed straight at the darkness. Thor erupted into a frenzy of barking, lunging so hard Nathan nearly lost hold of the leash. "Get back!" Nathan yelled, his voice carrying across the courtroom. "Get out of there!" The judge slammed his gavel in an attempt to regain control, but the noise was drowned out by the rising commotion. People were standing, voices rising from murmurs to frantic shouting. And then, from the dark hallway came a sound. A slow, heavy step, measured, unhurried, and drawing closer. Thor's barking shifted into a menacing snarl, his teeth bared, straining forward with all his strength. Dread clenched Nathan's chest. Whatever was in that hallway wasn't hiding. It was coming, and it wanted to be seen. The footsteps grew louder, cutting through the noise like a blade. Thor's growls shook the air, and Nathan had to brace himself in his chair to resist the force of the dog's pull. All eyes were fixed on the shadowed corridor, the source of a terror no one wanted to face. "Stay calm," the judge called, slamming the gavel again. But no one listened. People clutched bags, arms, anything, grasping for some sense of safety. The larger bailiff held his position, weapon steady, eyes on the dark. His partner stayed just behind, flashlight darting over the walls, catching flickers of shadow, but no form. Nathan's voice rose above the chaos. "You need to get out of there. It's not safe." His warning rang out. But the bailiff didn't retreat. He narrowed his eyes into the dim, jaw clenched, until the shadow moved again, this time unmistakably. It was slow, purposeful. The smaller bailiff gasped, flashlight trembling. "Someone's there," he whispered. The light caught a fleeting figure, tall, imposing, then vanished again into shadow. A wave of fear swept through the courtroom. The larger bailiff's grip on his gun tightened. "Show yourself," he barked. "Step where I can see you." Silence followed, dense and oppressive. Thor's snarls intensified, muscles tensed like a wound spring. Then, the figure stepped into the light. Calmly, deliberately. A man, face concealed beneath a hood, hands in the deep pockets of a thick coat. He moved with unnerving ease, stopping just inside the flashlight's beam, head tilted slightly, as if amused. Thor's growling deepened, claws raking the floor as Nathan fought to restrain him. "Who are you?" the bailiff demanded, gun trained on the stranger. The man gave no answer. Instead, he stepped forward, a faint smirk forming under his hood's shadow. Nathan's breath caught. Something about this man wasn't just wrong. It was off, deeply and dangerously so. He slowly raised a hand. The bailiffs tensed. "Relax," the man said, voice calm and confident. "I'm not here to hurt anyone." But the tone, the way the words clung to the air, made the room feel colder. Nathan didn't believe him. Neither did Thor. The room fell quiet as the man remained in the beam's edge, half lit by the jittering light. Thor's growls vibrated in the silence. The bailiff stood steady, hands trembling despite their training. Nathan's heart pounded. The man was too calm, like he fed off the fear he'd created. "Move forward." "Slowly," the lead bailiff ordered. The man tilted his head, then stepped closer, his boots tapping softly, each move calculated and confident. Thor barked violently, yanking at the leash. Nathan held tight, sweat beading on his palms. "Thor knows," he murmured. "He senses something's wrong." The judge glanced at him, face drawn in confusion. The smaller bailiff approached, flashlight in one hand, the other hovering near his holster. "Sir," he said, voice cracking, "identify yourself." The stranger finally raised his head, eyes sharp, cold, piercing. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," he repeated. Then slowly reached into his pocket. The bailiffs raised their weapons. Gasps echoed as someone in back murmured, "He's got something." The air tightened with fear. Nathan froze, clutching Thor's leash. The man pulled out a small metallic object. "Drop it!" both bailiffs shouted. The man froze, smirk deepening. "Relax," he said smoothly, raising the object. It gleamed faintly, a key. But Nathan's dread only grew. The courtroom didn't relax. Thor didn't stop. The dog remained locked on the man, growling low. The key was just a decoy. Nathan could feel it. "He's hiding something," he whispered. "He has to be." The man's smile grew, as if he heard Nathan's thoughts. The dread thickened, all attention locked on the key in his hand, the smirk on his lips. Thor's barking didn't stop. If anything, it grew louder, harsher, urgent. Nathan's hands trembled. Something much bigger was happening. "Drop the key and step back," the bailiff commanded again. The stranger's gaze slid to Thor. "That dog, he's special, isn't he? Always knows before it happens. That's why he's valuable." Nathan's stomach dropped. How does he know about Thor? The hairs on his neck stood up. "How do you know that?" Nathan demanded, voice trembling. Thor lunged again, barking wildly. The man's grin widened, something dark glinting in his eyes. He raised the key again. "You'll find out soon enough." And with a click, he turned it. A flicker. Then blackness. Gasps, screams, chairs scraping. Panic! When the lights returned, the man was no longer alone. Two figures flanked him, emerging like phantoms. Their faces were hidden, but their weapons gleamed. Thor's growl was almost inhuman, primal. Nathan's heart raced. This isn't just a man with a key. This was the start of something terrifying. The room exploded into chaos. People surged toward the exits, voices high with fear. The two new figures moved further in, dread rippling out from them. Thor barked relentlessly. Nathan's adrenaline surged. He knew the stranger wasn't bluffing. They were here for Thor. "Everyone stay calm," the judge shouted again, voice drowned in panic. The lead bailiff stepped forward. "Stay where you are," he commanded. But the man kept walking, calm, confident. His companions matched his pace. "No one has to get hurt," the man said, smooth and unwavering. "All I want is the dog." His calmness was more terrifying than a threat. Thor's stare never wavered. Nathan's heart thundered. "You're not taking him," he said, voice trembling but firm. He inched closer to Thor, hand steady on the leash. "He's my partner, my family. I don't care who you are, you're not taking him." The room held its breath. The man's smirk faded as he studied Nathan. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. "He's special. Keeping him only complicates things for you." Nathan's jaw set. "Thor stays with me." The room buzzed with whispers. Tension thickened. Thor snapped a bark, pulling all eyes back. Nathan leaned forward, ready for anything. Whatever this man wants, he won't get it. Not without a fight. The courtroom fell silent again as the standoff stretched on. The judge finally spoke. "This ends now. Bailiffs, remove them." The bailiff stepped forward. Thor growled low, tracking the man's every move. The stranger lifted a hand, halting his men. His face shifted, less smug now, almost resigned. "This isn't over," he said softly. "It's not just about the dog. You'll understand soon enough." He stepped back, smirk returning, empty of warmth. "He belongs to us, Nathan. We'll be back." Nathan didn't flinch. "He belongs to no one but me. And whatever you're after, you'll have to go through us." For the first time, the man paused, eyeing Nathan carefully, then turned, signaling his retreat. Only when they vanished did the room breathe again. The judge whispered, "Court is adjourned," his voice barely audible. Nathan sat still, eyes fixed on the door. Thor finally lowered to sit, growls softening, still alert. Nathan stroked his head. "You did good, buddy," he murmured, voice thick with emotion. As the courtroom emptied, Nathan remained, mind racing. He didn't know who the man was or what he truly wanted. But one thing was clear. This wasn't over. But whatever came next, they'd face it together. Because Thor wasn't just a dog. He was everything.